The world is indeed shifting, and Trump just dropped this little segment about crypto itself.
Many Americans are unaware that behind the scenes, the technical backbone of the financial system is decades out of date, many, many years out of date. You know that. Paul and others are straightening it out, but payments and money transfers are costly and take days or even weeks to clear. Under this bill, the entire ancient system will be eligible for a 21st century upgrade using the state of the art crypto technology. Who would have thought we would have been saying that 2 years after many.
Look at that, huh? And it's not only about the back end of how all of our money is moving all around the world. It's also about the world itself. And as Macron just said, well, appears that Donald Trump, Xi, and Putin are part of a global shift that is working against Europe. And that is indeed true, because the European leaders are insane. They're bad for business, just like how the Iranians were. And if we look at the big board here, we get to understand just a little bit what that's all about, right? It's dystopian risk. So the Chinese, they want to come all the way through up into Europe to sell to Europe. Russia wants to come down through the strait and sell to Asia. Russia wants to stop selling to Europe because they're tired of being dependent on them for their revenues. They're getting tied up in Ukraine. Nord Stream was destroyed. The European leaders destroyed their own energy making capacity. Meanwhile, Russia sent out the Wagner Group to flip those governments, to cut France off from their inputs, their minerals, their resources. And what has Trump done? He got Venezuela back up to production. Cuba's about ready to fall because all the tankers are moving in to here to get filled up to then export all around the world. Trump got that executive order to get California producing again. We have new refineries. And meanwhile, Trump makes a play for Greenland for the rare earths and for security. He has a deal already with the Congo for rare earths. Ukraine, after that's done with, for rare earths, because China has a stranglehold on rare earths. So Trump makes the play. He has all of our aircraft carriers, 3 of them, surrounding the Middle East and in the Med to cut off the oil supply or to get a hold of it. Really, it's all about the European leaders because they are insane. But as Trump's doing all of this all around the world to get everything back up to production, he also puts these people under pressure. So, we got Argentina makes a bold move on the Falklands, bringing in another aircraft carrier down there. And why? Because the Falklands are right there. The UK is right here, and they don't have a navy. They barely have a military. This is another trade lane that's going to be important in the next century, just like how the Arctic's going to be important in the next century. Russia wants its ports to then feed out through this trade lane, and we're working on ADAC, which is a base up here in Alaska. So, Alaska. Meanwhile, we have all of our defense agreements with the first island chain. So, Japan, Indonesia, Philippines. While we're working on the second island chain, clearing out those old World War II bases, all to defend Taiwan. Meanwhile, Taiwan and their chip manufacturers relocate to the United States. But remember, those chips, they only can be made with the United States source silica. But Taiwan won't be allowed to fall just because we're moving chip manufacturers to the United States. That's our growth capacity. And Chris Wright is facilitating a lot of nuclear reactors, decommissioned ones, to come back online, not to mention all of the other resources and power generation that's been allowed to expand. It's dystopian risk, man. Dystopian risk. And Macron's right. Yeah, it's about Europe and cutting them out of all the negotiations. They're not a part of any of the major decisions that are going on in the world. Not at all. And Starmer pisses off everybody. Trump hates him, and we got the king coming here in a couple of days. So I wonder how Argentina making a play for the Falklands is gonna pass off. But remember, Starmer, his government's going, Labor's going down because of the whole Mandelson affair and the slow rollout of the Epstein files. And like what Trump was saying about crypto, that's only one part of it. And remember what Ripple is. Ripple is a company that literally has all of these licenses, money transmitter, conditional, like it. Just look at all of them. I organize this for you. Organize this for you so you can look at it, and then look at their acquisitions. The Taco, G Treasury, Rail. No other crypto company can afford this type of shit, you know? And why is that important? Well, remember what an economy is. It's inputs, throughputs, and outputs, but it all occurs with units, method, and means. And the units, what is that? Well, that's your stablecoins or fiat. And although then there's different types of stablecoins. At first, they're going to be out there based off of debt. And then it's going to be tokenized real world assets and securities from a tokenized market. And remember, all of this has to compete at the end stage of this with the BRICS units. And remember, what are the BRICS? Right there. Russia and China working against Europe. So while they may be getting out there, all these stablecoins based off of 2-year treasury, in the event, and remember, look at the sequence. Look what we're building up to. Countries are dumping treasuries. So treasury is doing strategic buybacks, which is shielding parties. We have to get control of the Fed because we have control of the SEC, OCC, CFTC, IRS, and Treasury. Haven't got control of the Fed yet, but that's coming. Ripple got the basic license, and the DTC is tokenizing the market. And then after we get control of all the regulators, pass the Clarity Act, and then boom, bond market chaos can happen. So we can shift the ownership of U.S. equities abroad, back home. And it's like $14 trillion. So it's insane how much of these NGOs hold of United States treasuries, or U.S. equities, rather. And how our allies and these companies, well, who gets what in the big shift? Trump has developed this ranking system now with these countries who helped out during this Strait of Hormuz situation. We got a ranking system. Who's going to go after their refund for the tariffs? So that's companies having a ranking system. So that way, when they finally sell off their U.S. equities or their bonds or whatever else in the chaos that's to come, who gets poison pills versus who gets ownership of U.S. equities? Trump's thinking on this whole other plane of existence. And we have the Trump accounts that come July 5th going live. And that's an index of the tokenized market that DTCC is doing. So it just makes sense that he's going to buy low in an honest market and wait. There's the battle of issuers. Central banks versus these companies. Central banks are unaccountable. And we are forced to use that unit. That's why the overall scam is Congress runs a deficit, turns the debt, and it's auto-bought by the central bank with a unit that we are forced to use. That's why it's always going to be endless. It will always be endless. But we can move to this by abandoning Fed notes, going with stablecoins that eventually will be backed by tokenized real-world assets and securities. And yeah, a little bit of government debt. But the fraud exposure that's going on, it's more about discrediting the debt that's already out there. But you have to get these people to sell it. You have to get them to sell it. And there's only an event that can happen for that to even occur. This is
40 years ago,
is.
the Southern Poverty Law Center bankrupted the Klan and later recovered millions from neo-Nazi groups, with lawsuits representing victims of violence. But Tuesday, the tables turned. The Justice Department charged the organization with fraud for allegedly misleading donors and lying to financial institutions by paying members of violent extremist groups millions of dollars to act as informants.
The SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred.
Including, the indictment alleges, a leader of the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, who, quote, attended the event at the direction of SPLC, made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC, and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. But Law Center interim president Brian...
Point is, they're looting the country because of these deficits that Congress runs. It's got to go somewhere, all that money. And it goes to a bunch of NGOs that then come back to fundraise off of the very stuff that they're stoking. They're supposed to fight. They're funding it. All the division we see is all manufactured. And now we got all those influencers that left, they're the ones that were causing the division inside of MAGA. And they're not providing any sort of education about what the hell's going on in the world at all. It's pretty scary that we're in this spot now where who the hell do you trust? Who the hell do you trust? Trump's saying it. If you just listen to him and you understand the world, how he's reshuffling alliances, how he's getting minerals and resources back on the market, how he's making sure that this guy, listen. The deal the world made with the U.S. was simple. You police the waterways, refrain from being an asshole, and the world will perpetually buy your debt. You also get cheap shit made for pennies on the dollar by third and second world slaves. The only reason the U.S. hasn't plunged into depression is because of foreign investors propping up equities in U.S. treasuries. Now you can't fulfill your end of the deal, but still want the world to buy your debt and fund your deficits and send your cheap shit. Nope. But if you go back and remember about the big shift that I've been talking about, and Trump's been saying about back end, put it all together. What do you have? You have it to where the back end financing for how all this is being done is being revamped, and they're using crypto. And there's only one company that has literally everything that is needed for that. And then you have all the world that is getting reshuffled. Then you have the debt market and the ranking system. So when you put it all together, man, we're heading towards an event to where all that debt can then be bought up by the Fed while the Fed is being abandoned itself. And we go into these stablecoin issuers with the units that are first circulating by debt, but then to tokenize real-world assets and securities, getting us on the asset monetary system while we pull back from the world and set the world up for better trade, more resources out on the market, getting rid of these vectors of instability. When you sit back and you take a look about it and you understand it, it's all very clear. I don't know if this helped, but there it is.